Hi there. Today I'm starting with this tray that I thrifted. It is, I believe it's just a replica. It's not like an antique or anything like that. And so I'm going to give this about 3 coats of black paint. I did start out with a sponge, but I decided to go with a brush for the second and third coat. And I'm just going to get this covered. What I do after this is I like to pull the paint back from the edges anytime I paint these trays. And instead of using a baby wipe like you may have seen, I'm just going to take a cloth sprayed with water and take back some of that paint. I'm taking a page out of a newsprint. It's like a replica newsprint book, and I'm going to go ahead and put this in the center of our tray. And so it's kind of tricky getting this lined up when you can't really see where you're going, and you want to make sure that it's straight up and down. So I kind of check it there and just slide it to the top, and I mold it down around the edges. I could use a pencil and draw and then cut out, but I didn't want to risk any harsh edges or anything like that. So I'm opting for water and brush method. This actually turned out really well, and the effect that I was going for around the edges was okay for me. Like I said, I don't really want to use a pencil and draw around this the inside of this tray, because it might be a little too harsh. I prefer this because I can soften those edges and have a really kind of like an organic rough edge to this, and it ends up working out quite nicely for this project. I'm going to go ahead and tear out the oval shape for our tray. This is a really easy method. I like doing this because I don't want to use a pencil. Like I said, I don't want any harsh lines, and I just want it to be kind of rough and organic. If you need to add more water, you can. I use my hand as a guide. I've got a coffee and water mixture here. I do go for about a medium darkness, and I didn't want to go too dark, not with this piece. I do on my last piece. So what I'm going to do is just, after laying down that first coat, I do spray with water and then pick it up in certain places. That's just to give it a little bit of variation and interest. So now I have my stencil. It is a bee with a crown and a wreath. I really, really like this stencil a lot. You can actually use this in 3 separate images, but I'm going to use it how it was designed all together as one image. So I'm just going to take a cosmetic sponge with black paint, acrylic, and make sure you offload that paint quite a bit. And if you need to go over it a couple of times, you can. That's really the best way to get it from bleeding or splotching underneath that stencil. Just do some nice light coats. If you need to go over it a second time, you can. But it ends up working really nice when you use a light coat. And so I'm just going to go ahead and apply that. And then after this, I am going to, well, I dry it so I can add a coat of silver paint on top of this. The black acts as a good base to get that silver to really shine, but also it just creates some interest and variation because of the two colors. And so I went ahead and dried that. I didn't want to get into any trouble sliding this template around. And so I'm going to add that silver. It already looks gorgeous to me. But so when we take that up, you can see a lot of variation there with the black and the silver. And here's a close-up. I decided I did want to go ahead and sand off some of the paint. Now I know I used a cloth before. I'm going to just go for it very, very lightly, very gently. Use sandpaper. Normally I wouldn't use sandpaper on metal like this, but I knew I wasn't going to get into too much trouble just because it was a very, very faint sanding. And so now I just lay down a little bit of Mod Podge, and most people put the Mod Podge on the paper first and then turn it over, but today I just wanted to throw that Mod Podge on there. I knew because of the thickness of the paper I wasn't going to get into any trouble with wrinkling or bubbling or anything like that. So I was confident putting that Mod Podge down on the tray first. So what I like to do after any time I do any kind of decoupaging is I just take a clean dry cloth and press everything down along the edges and just make sure everything's nice and smooth. So I want to create a little bit of aging. I take my brown ink and a brush. It's the same brush I use all the time. I have two different brushes for inking like this. And so guys, here is the finished project, project number 1. For project number 2, I'm going to take another page out of this book that I recently got, and it is a picture of like a soldier with the flag and an eagle. Again, this is kind of like a replica of kind of old-timey newspaper, and so I'm just going to go ahead, throw that plaque over the top as best as I can as far as centering everything. Now I don't go close to that edge. I lean the pencil against the top part of that plaque so I can get a good about a ½ an inch overlap. And so that way when I glue this image down, I can sand off that overlap and not cut myself short. And so we get that cut out. Now I'm just going to stain it. This is going to be a light stain compared to my other projects. I didn't want, because there's so much ink on that image, I didn't want to darken it too much. I wanted to be able to see all the details still in that image from this page. So it does dry a little bit lighter. I'm fine with that. That is the look I'm going for. Now I'm just going to throw down some Mod Podge. Make sure you get it all the way to the edges when you do any kind of decoupaging and sanding like this. That way you'll get a nice clean edge and it won't kind of buckle on you or rip or anything like that. And so let's get that on centered as best as I can. I wanted the image of the soldier in the center, and so I just kind of eyeball it, but it turned out pretty good. So now I'm just going to smooth it down again with my cloth to make sure there's no wrinkles or bubbles. Because this is a paper, I know that it's not going to tear on me or anything like that. It's pretty durable. So now we just sand downwards. That way, again, the paper won't tear up or buckle or anything like that. Always sand down. And of course, I love to add any kind of aging when possible. I've got my brown ink again with a dauber. I go around the edges. It really completes the look, takes it to a little bit of another level. And so I always do this with my pieces. I wanted to keep going with this and add just a little bit something. So I have this rusty star. I'm going to add it to the top with a little bit of hot glue. And that is the finished project number 2. For project number 3, I have this small pan. I did go ahead and pre-drill a hole for hanging. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the leftover paper from one of the projects, and I think it's going to fit in the center of this. We're just going to go with whatever image takes. I know there is a ship at the top of that, and then I think it says like America something. And so instead of drawing with a pencil around the edge, because I can't really see where I'm going, and it's going to create just a harsh circle, again, I'm going with the water, just pushing that against the bottom edge of that tray. And it's giving us a pretty good circle there. So I'm just going to go ahead and tear this out again. I'm not going to worry about it being perfect. I'm going for a very rustic look with this. Going in with a darker coffee and water mixture this time. I'm going for a very dark, kind of a rustic look. And so I'm going to dry that really quick. I really love the dark staining on this one. And I'm just going to put some Mod Podge in the bottom of this pan. Now I got a little bit more Mod Podge than I would normally use, so I'm just going to kind of scoop that out and then coat the top of the paper with the extra so I don't waste it. So you can see here where I'm lining up the ship with that hole. That's going to make sure that everything is nice and level. And so I'm going to throw on that extra Mod Podge so I don't waste any of it. So I'm going through some of my metal scraps. I'm looking for a chain. I have a few different ones in here, and I need to find the right one that's going to fit through that hole that I drilled. And you know what, guys? I would love to get into jewelry making, but I just can't do the teeny tiny little chain and rings and the pliers and all that. I would go absolutely insane, but I would love to get into jewelry making. This is about all I can all I can stand is just to cut one link and link it together with another one before I'm just going out of my mind. Anyways, so yeah, so I'm just gonna add this together with another link of a chain, and that's going to give us a hanger for this project. Now I wanted to add something just a little bit more to this one as well. I have the same smaller star as the last project, and I thought about adding 2, but it's kind of overcrowding. I just want it simple. I'm just going to keep it up there in that corner where there's a little bit of a blank space. So I take my hot glue and add that there just for a little something. And so because that's a rusty star, I wanted to bring that rust over to the pan as well, but I want them to match. So I'm going to use my coffee bean color acrylic paint along with a reddish brown. I mix those two and I paint the star, but then I also want to paint the edge of this pan so they both match, the star and the edge of the pan. And so I'm just going to go ahead and use a sponge. This is kind of just a fun, simple little way to add something to your projects and gives it a little bit of interest and a nice rustic, rusty feel. So I'm taking some black ink and just going around the edges. I'm kind of going for, you know how when you like burn the edges of paper and it has that smoky look? That's kind of what I'm going for. Instead of using brown ink like I normally do, I thought it would go nice with the black pan. And so I'm just going to go ahead and get the edge of this all inked. I'm also adding ink to the outer edge of the pan and just a little bit to that star. I was having so much fun, I didn't want to stop, so I just kept going. And, it's just going to add to it's going to take that flat, even though it's like a rust look, it's going to take that flat rust down and give it a little bit of depth. And so that's it for project number 3, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.